But don't you agree, though, that airbrush artists who just airbrush should seriously consider adding, pinstriping to their repertoire?
Yeah, I think so. It depends on what the demand is for them as individuals. Mm-hmm. I've also incorporated, well, actually, my love of automotive art, my love of space art. Mm-hmm. In the old days, when I would do a painting of a car, it would be a painting of a car, at a drag strip with the grandstands. And mm-hmm. if I did a painting of outer space, it would just be a painting of outer space. What I started to do, and this happened a couple of years back, was when I got into this asymmetrical type striping, I said, what would happen if I were to incorporate some artwork into the striping, see where it goes? And started out as just like that little eyeball is kind of like a crude example of what I'm talking about, but I put a little kind of a semi-realistic eyeball in the middle of this crazy stripe piece. Mm-hmm. I started to incorporate a little space scene where that eyeball would be. Mm-hmm. And over time I found that it morphed. The space art became bigger, and the wow. graphic element became not necessarily smaller, but it became the foreground of the painting. So when I did these space paintings, I did a whole series of them. I must have 100 of them by now. But what's cool about it is, and when people see them, the first thing they say is, wow, it looks like you're walking through this crazy organic design into another dimension. With this, you have like a foreground, and then you have space. And it's the same thing with the automotive art. I try to incorporate three elements. I try to incorporate my love of space art, my love of automotive art, and my love of striping and graphics. And I've had a couple pieces where I've actually put all three in one. Here's a race car getting ready to stage, and it's on the surface of a planet, but behind the planet is this series of organic graphics, and then beyond that is another depth of space. So it's got everything going on, but it all works because it's being able to balance all three of those on the same canvas. Yeah. That's the secret.
It's great to have the skill set to be able to do that.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, Glen is also an accomplished drummer. And you left art 2 or 3 times, but it always drew you back in, didn't it?
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people always say, oh, well, the music's a nice business. Unless you become the Rolling Stones or whatever, you're not going to make a living at it. You can make a halfway decent income, but you're never going to support yourself. And that was the general consensus from
So you could never get art out of your system?
No, I always go back to art. Yeah. And it was never for the love of money. It was for the disgust of the music business and the not so much the monetary end of the music business that would get on my nerves. It was the drama. Dealing with other musicians can be a real pain.
Yeah.
And probably the best bands that I was ever in were bands that we got together, and they were all in the same boat as me. They all had a career. Mm-hmm. They all were married. They all had kids. And we just went out because we loved to play. If you're good at what you do, you're good at what you do.
Got it.
I've had people that finally came out to hear me play with a band that they knew I played in bands, but they would come out and they'd see the band, they'd hear me drum. What they would say is, wow, Glenn, I had no idea that you could play the drums that well. I figured, you were really good at lettering and striping and whatever, that the drumming would kind of be like backseat as far as ability. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, you don't understand. I said, it all comes from the same boiler room. And it's the same thing with music and art with me. I'm passionate about both. It's whichever duct I want to use at that time. Do I want to run through the music duct? Do I want to run through the artwork duct? Or I've actually got a renewed love with my business, which I haven't had in a long time.
That's great.
And I really enjoy getting out and meeting the other artists. I really enjoy every day getting up and not having to be paid every time I put a brush in my hand.
Well, having you back is the art world's gain, and we're really happy about that. Yeah. Now I want to talk about our Airbrush Getaway preview with Glen. And Chris Johnson, who is an Airbrush Getaway alumnus, he's been to a number of Airbrush Getaways, took a course with you recently and said it was the most amazing experience. What can we expect from you and your class at this Airbrush Getaway?
Basically, I'm going to try to do the same things I do at my own seminars. First and foremost, is when I meet the students, I like to break down the barriers of anxiety, unsureness, fear of the quote ledging crap. I find that people in an environment where they're more relaxed will actually take in a lot more information and retain it. I mean, when you think about little kids, why is it a lot of the things that kids learn, early on in life, they retain so quickly? They're like little sponges. And it has nothing to do with brain capacity at that time. I feel it has a lot to do with lack of anxiety. When you're a little kid, you're free, you're innocent, you're open to things. You have nothing blocking those portholes, for learning. And that's why I think kids, their learning abilities start to diminish as they get older. It's a little harder to learn and retain, and it's because life comes at you.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to keep the environment more like a fun time. I like to break down the tension. I mean, I'd like to tell jokes. Mm-hmm. I like to tell road stories about my own experiences because they're pretty funny.
Yeah.
And all that lets people relax.
Sure.
Lets them let down their guard. And I think that provides a nice base for retaining the information that I'm going to show them. Like with my school that I do on my own, it's my curriculum. When I started it, I had it kind of like a really good idea what I was going to do, but when you get everybody in there, you start to get different questions asked, and I pretty much stuck to my script, but it always varies off a little bit.
Sure.
Because it depends on what the mass of the students are looking for. Sometimes you might get a class where all they care about is striping. Mm-hmm. Or you might get a class where one person wants to stripe, the other 9/10 of them want to learn lettering. So I'm going to have to feel it out.
But your class still is going to be about gold leafing, striping, lettering.
Right.
And what other cool things are you going to show them? I know you've got some tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah, I got a lot of tricks, things that I've learned over the years just from the School of Hard Knocks. And they're like I said before, I have some unorthodox techniques, and they're not probably written in any books on proper sign painting. Doesn't mean they're not valid, because every technique came from an accident or somebody trying something, and if it goes into print, it suddenly becomes the right way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody could accidentally come up with something that works better.
Yeah.
It might not be the rules, but it's the means to an end.
Yeah.
And that would be something I would be showing people. There's little tricks with certain reducers for paints that work better than the traditional ones. There's certain things I do with brushes that make them work better. I call it hot rodding the brush, because sometimes brush manufacturers, I think, have had a problem lately with getting the hairs consistent. And certain strokes with a brush are almost impossible unless you do these little tricks to the brushes to make them work better for you. So I'm going to try to touch on a little of everything. I mean, I got my little notebook. I'm going to write down what I feel I can bring to the table, but it's like I said, once I get everybody in the class,
sure,
I'm going to basically say, listen, all you guys and girls, what would you like to get out of this class? And kind of probably ask everybody.
Sure.
Just go around the room and say, what do you want from this? What do you want from this?
Sure.
And then I'm going to make a decision there where to go with the class. I'll have a couple of different alternate curriculums, but it's all subject to change based on what these people want to learn.
Yeah. We get a lot of calls from people who, want to attend the Getaway, but they don't feel they have the experience. They feel they're going to be alone, the only one there that doesn't know anything. But the fact is, the Airbrush Getaway program was started to really promote the use of airbrush and pinstriping and get beginners started. So it really started as a beginner's program. And I can tell you that everyone who comes there with that really has little to no experience leaves pretty much on par with everybody else. Mm-hmm. And they learn how it's not so intimidating. The instructors are down to earth. Everyone's friendly. And by the end of the 4 or 5 days, we have 1-day and 4-day classes for those of you unfamiliar with the Airbrush Getaway program. But after that period of time, it's, people just really raise the bar on what they're doing. So whether you're a beginner or a professional, this program has something for everyone. and it's tailored to your individual needs, and that's very important to know. And Glen's really very much on board with that, because Glen is ultimately the professional's instructor. And but he also works with a lot of beginning students, and he has, I'll tell you, I hear that you've gotten amazing results with these people.
Yeah, well, even in my first class, I had 11 students, and they ranged from one person who had never picked up a brush to another student that was 75 years old that had been lettering and doing, sign work probably as long as I have, if not longer. But they, that guy wanted to come in because he wanted to learn how to do airbrush chrome letters. That was his thing. All he kept saying is, Glen, when are we going to do the chrome? When are we going to do the chrome?
Yeah.
He was like a little kid. I would watch everybody, I'd give them a lesson. I would walk around, and I would just watch what they were doing. And you get a couple of them that would be a little nervous, like because I'm watching them. And I'm like, how you doing? And they're like, oh, I'm really having a hard, getting all angst up. And I'm like, relax. There's no problem here. I said, let me watch what you're trying to do and what you're having a problem with. And they would be trying to do this stroke of a letter where it starts with a sharp end and ends with a sharp end with a nice broad stroke in the middle, and they were having trouble landing the brush on the surface and then picking it up. And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I says, and I don't believe in walking up to anybody and just saying, well, that's all wrong, because that's putting a negative charge on it. I would just look at, what they were having a problem with. I would say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you something, and it's going to make all this go away. And they're like, well, what do you think I'm doing wrong? I said, well, I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to evaluate it. And the first thing I noticed is they were paleting the brush. And I looked down and I could see it was wrong. I don't tell them it's wrong. I just watch, and then I watch them paint the letter. And the angle of the brush was wrong. But again, I don't tell them that's wrong. Mm-hmm. I just let them go through the whole thing. And I said, now I'm going to show you something that's going to make this all go away, and you're going to be able to do the letter the way I do it. Mm-hmm. And I would take the brush and I would palette it. And first I would describe the brush as a gun. I said, here's the guns, the bullets are down there, I'm going to show you how to load the gun. And then I'm going to show you how to shoot it. And I would take the brush and I would palette it, and I would show them all these techniques, which it's really hard to show, in a video. Hands-on is always better than everything. I always say that a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 1,000 pictures, and hands-on is worth 1,000, videos. So it's definitely better, because you can't ask a video questions in the middle of something. Hands-on.
There's no substitute for hands-on.
No, not at all.
The videos are great, but hands-on is.
Yeah, hands-on is the best.
So you've had great success teaching now.
Yeah, the smiles on their faces. So like I would load the brush, and I'd say, okay, I loaded the gun for you. Now I want you to shoot it. Yeah. And they would pull the stroke down, and it was like this big smile came on their face.
Funny.
It's like I taught them a magic trick. And then I said, all right, now it's your turn.
Yeah.
Palette the brush, paint. And then they paint another stroke next to it, and then the smile got even bigger.
Yeah.
And I says, you'll be fine. And I looked at the work at the end of my class. It was a 2-day seminar, and everybody in there did 100%.
Wow.
I mean, it was like the guy that never picked up a brush was lettering. He was painting script and casual stroke letters. The people that had more experience might have picked up 100%, where this guy, comparatively, who never picked up a brush, probably picked up 200%.
Wow.
For his level, he actually retained more information, probably, than the person that had a little more experience.
Yeah.
So that made me feel good. Everybody batted 1,000 walking out that door.
Well, Chris, who's a cool customer, he's a great guy. You know Chris Johnson. He was like a kid on the phone with me, and he said it was unlike any pinstriping instruction he's ever had. It was almost unworldly. Wow. I mean, he was thrilled about it. We're very excited about that.
Oh, I'm honored to be there.
Now, part 2 of this is going to be some demos that Glen is going to do for us. I'm really looking forward to this.
Same here.
It's going to be a great show.
Back at you.
We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to learn a lot. Glen, thanks for this part of it.
Yep, Cliff, thank you.
I want to thank Glen for being here with us today. I can guarantee 2 things. One, Glen is one of the all-time greats in his field, and no one will dispute it. Mr. J, who is also a legend, will tell you that Glen is probably the best he's ever seen. Anyway, thanks for watching.